Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with another couple cards using the same color combo as my previous video, because I mentioned in that one how much I wanted to do just more experimenting with these two Distress Oxide sprays, which are Gathered Twigs and Hickory Smoke. And if you missed my previous video on it, I will have a link to it at the end of this video. So this time I'm using them on Canson XL watercolor paper. I've mentioned this many times in videos. The type of paper you're using will really change the results, like on all sorts of things. You know, whether you're using sprays or watercolor or you're ink blending, stamping, etc., etc. It just the type of paper and the type of product you're using. So last time I'd used mixed media heavy stock, which has a very smooth finish. This time the watercolor paper, it takes water differently. It's got a bit of a texture to it. So I did the same thing. I sprayed heavily with water, and then I sprayed the oxide sprays, and then I kind of moved it back and forth. And then I set it aside to dry. I'm not going to fiddle with it anymore. And then I'm going to do a second piece, because why not? And I have some paper towel in my splat box just to kind of contain, because there's like a lot of liquid, especially when you're spraying heavily with water. And I'm also using the paper towel to kind of sop up whatever is like pooling around the edges. So with this one, I'm not moving it as much, and I'm not adding as much water. Just playing around with it. So, and like I said in my previous video, this is a color combo I never would have thought of, but I love it. So I wanted to use my Glacier paste this time, and I have the original. This is the golden era. This one came out when they first released the Glacier paste, so that container is like 2.5 years old, almost 3 years old now. This is why I say press and seal. It is amazing. That is the same container I've used and opened multiple times, but I just keep the press and seal on it, and the paste is fine. So I had that one, and then I have the new one that I used in a previous video just the other day, the bronze metal. The bronze was too bronze and the gold wasn't the right shade, so I mixed them together. I just took some out of the container, mixed it up on my little plastic palette until I was happy with the color, and then I'm going to apply this over the spring Boho circle stencil, just one of my faves. If you do have excess paste after mixing it up like this, you could just put it in a little container. Again, seal it with some press and seal so it doesn't dry out. I had just enough for both of these, so it was perfect. So I just applied the paste over the stencil. The Glacier paste, if you apply it over a stencil like this and just a nice thin application, it dries pretty quickly, and it dries really, really flat. So you don't get a lot of dimension with it. And then it gives it that faux foiled look, which I love. So applied that, and then as soon as this was done, let those dry, cleaned off my stencil, palette knife, that little plastic palette, and everything's good to go. So while those were drying, I had done a bunch of die cutting. So I pulled out my all-time fave Etched Dragonfly wafer die set. I didn't even pull it out. I didn't pull it out. It was sitting on my desk. I don't even put it away. Anywho, I die cut the wings from the Tonic Copper Mine cardstock, and again, chef's kiss. Love it. I was going to do the wings in vellum because that's just habit, but I have the vellum leaves that I'm going to use, so I was like, you wouldn't really see them. And I was going to do the bodies in the Copper Mine, but instead did the wings with the Copper Mine, and then the bodies I die cut from Simon's slate gray cardstock. And then I'm just adhering them together with little bits of craft tacky glue. I'm using my craft tacky glue that I put the fine metal tip on, so I get just a teensy little amount of glue, which is perfect for these little wings. And yeah, my only wish, I wish I had bigger ones exactly like this, because I know I have the honeybee ones that I just showed you guys, which I'm super excited about. But I also want this exact style. Like, Simon needs to do a set with ones that are bigger than this and smaller than this. And I would be so happy to have 3 sizes of these dragonflies. Anywho, adhered them all together. And then I had die cut the bold thanks wafer die from more slate gray cardstock. And as is tradition, I'm going to stack these layers together. 3 layers to give that sentiment the dimension that I like. So again, using the craft tacky glue, applying it, stacking them together, and then just doing that a second time. So I've got my 3 layers, and I had done that again just off camera because you guys don't need to see me do the same thing over and over again. But I had done that a second time for the second card front. So I just fiddle a little bit to get everything lined up. That's another reason why I like craft tacky glue. It doesn't dry too quickly, so I have enough time to, move things around a little bit, get things in place, but it also doesn't just ooze out everywhere. You know what I mean? I can be really picky about my glue, but this one's still my favorite. So anyway, did all of that, set those aside so I could work on the insides of the cards. I'm using the stencil again that's been cleaned. I masked off at the score line on the inside of the card, and I used some Post-it tape just to mask off the side where the stencil hangs off so I don't get ink where I don't want it. And then I'm just very lightly blending Gathered Twigs Distress Oxide ink with one of my blending brushes. I'm not picking up a lot of ink, and I'm wiping the excess off on just a scrap piece of cards or paper beside my card because I just want it nice and light. I don't want it intense because I want to be able to write over it. So I repeat the process on the second card base, just lining everything up and then quickly blending that ink over the stencil. Once that's blended, I'm going to pull out my Misty and the XL Greetings 2 stamp set again because there's so many stamps in this set that I just love. So I'm using one of my all-time favorite stamps again, and that says just a card to say you're amazing. So I lined up that sentiment in my Misty, and this I'm going to stamp with that Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide ink, and I need to re-ink this ink pad. I can tell because I had to ink this up and stamp it 3 times. So I could tell this ink pad is getting a little dry. I used it on the last video as well with those big wildflower stamps, and I was like, yep, it needs more ink. So inked that up multiple times to get a nice solid impression of that sentiment. Did the exact same thing on the second card base. So now I'm going to start assembling my card front. So I pulled out the PRIVET branch wafer die that has been super popular. Super popular. I think it's on reserve again for those that haven't got it yet because, again, it's just been popular. I love it. So I die cut it from vellum, and I'd also die cut it from ivory cardstock. And I showed this in a video earlier this month with this exact same wafer die. I'm not putting any adhesive on the vellum. I just put adhesive on the cardstock die cut, and then I'm sticking it on top, just, slightly offsetting it from the vellum one. And that's what's going to adhere the vellum down. So I don't have to worry about any adhesive peeking out through the vellum. So once I got that where I wanted it, I just put a couple of acrylic blocks on top of it and let it sit for a couple of minutes. And then my AmyR twine, that same thing. I don't bother putting this away either. It just stays on my desk. I'm going to wrap this around my card front. And then once that's wrapped around, I'm going to use my honeybee reverse tweezers to hold this in place so that I can tie my bow. It gives me the time to fiddle, and I don't have to give, my hands a cramp I used to do this just holding it down with my pinky. But reverse tweezers for the win, another must-have tool. I have multiples of them because just like everything, they walk off. The amount of tools that just grow legs and disappear. But I did find one. I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, tied my little bow. Once I was happy with it, I'm going to trim off the excess with my scissors. And then I made sure that twine was straight because I'm going to line up my sentiment kind of so it's almost sitting on top, of the twine. So I'd add adhesive to that and then pop that onto the card front. And then for my little dragonflies, I'm just going to use a couple of teeny little slivers of Big Mama foam tape. And I'm going to apply that to the back of the bodies. So that just adheres them really, really well. But then the wings are kind of, popped up. There's that little bit of dimension that, I love without it being too bulky. So I applied those little bits of foam tape, peel off the excess, pop those into place. And then I'm going to use more of the foam tape on the back of the card front to adhere this to my card base because I love this foam tape because it's thin. It's not super thick and bulky. It's about half the thickness of standard foam tape. That's why you guys see me use it on practically every single card because I love it. Gives me my dimension without creating a ton of bulk. So applied this to the back of this entire panel, peel off the backing paper, and then stick this onto my card base. And then of course I'm going to add all my bling. I've got my Studio Caudia dark chocolate pearls, Studio Caudia's Cafe au lait pearls, and Studio Caudia's vintage shimmer pearls. Love. And then speaking of tools that I found, I did find my embellishment wand with the purple tip. It had rolled under a piece of furniture. And I just happened to glance it out of the corner of my eye last night. I found it. I was so happy. So yeah. Usually you don't find your things until you order a new set or a new one or whatever. And then when the new one arrives, you find the old one. That's just tradition. But for once in my life, I actually found this before I ordered another one. So anyway, adhered those into place with the craft tacky glue. And then I paired these cards with some bronze metallic envelopes from Simon, which are just, again, chef's kiss. Like, oh, love. So these cards are really fun. You got that like metallic-y look of that glacier paste, and then those fabulous wings of the dragonflies and the bling and the vellum and all the fun stuff. So as always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I will have a supply list, and I'll link to all the supplies I used, so you can check that out below if you're interested. And then at the end, I'll link to my previous video using this color combo. So if you guys want to check that out, you can. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting. I very much appreciate it. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.